Hey, everybody. As we get ready to move into part 2 of our playlist cover project, and we're thinking about getting started on our sketching for brainstorming, I wanted to give an example first of what it would sound like, maybe in your mind, to be studying the inspiration that you have collected and thinking carefully about how it's going to inform your own artwork. So I'm just going to use the graphics that I've collected onto my slides here on this page and the next one, and kind of chunk them into different ideas. The first one that I want to look at is this set of three in the upper right on this first page. They have a lot in common. They are all three by the same artist as part of a single series. And that uniformity is part of what makes them successful. The fact that there are shapes or ideas within the designs that carry over from one design to the next. And then another key aspect is the way that things change, are different in ways that feel consistent with what has been done, and are different in ways that are surprising or unique to that particular design. So these are what kind of initially drew me to this project in the first place. And I just wanted to spend a little bit of time stopping to think about what makes them feel successful to me. And one of the things that I think they highlight really well is the enjoyment that people get out of symmetry. And not just the most obvious symmetries, but some unexpected symmetries and repetitions, maybe also. So one thing that you'll notice is really clear in all of these, besides the circle in the middle, are the strong diagonal lines that go from corner to corner on the main square. And so splitting into triangles is a very noticeable component of all of the designs. And so that represents kind of a diagonal symmetry that is, it's unique to squares, right? So it plays off of the shape that's defining the outline for the whole design. And there are sometimes lines dividing straight down the middle. You can see them in two of the designs here, but not showing up in the third. So that's an example of the way that things can be emphasized in one place and omitted somewhere else, and the combination brings out interest to the viewer. Another thing that is really a big part of what I like about a lot of the other designs on this list, besides these three, is the idea of things having depth, even when they're built out of such simple geometric shapes as we have in these three. And one maybe kind of obvious place is on the right-hand side of this design, where because of the way this triangle is split into bands that go from light to dark, and the high contrast here between the dark parts of that triangle and the white of the circle, we really get the sense of this being on top, because it has separate pieces that are all visible, and then the circle is going behind it. Not so much that this circle stops, but that it really would continue on behind to connect up over here. our brains just want to finish that shape. And so they think of it as being hidden behind another shape if we can't see it. Then on the other hand, we have this pattern of cutting into the triangular shapes over here in this corner. So starting from under there, that those lines end in the edge of the circle. So we really get this kind of three-layered or potentially really many-layered effect where even these triangles themselves could be thought of as kind of splitting into like top and lower layers. They're all layered above the white circle, and then this white circle is layered above these, but perhaps even those are coming in as layers one on top of the other. And it's an illusion, and it's not even an illusion that the artist had to work particularly hard for. It's something that our eyes want to see when we look at design and pattern and shape. So that would be something that I would know that I want to highlight or take advantage of in my own work when I get ready for my own design. The way that things could overlap to show depth, not as like three-dimensional objects, but depth of layers. On the other hand, another key aspect of some of the designs that I found later in my research for the project really do focus in on three-dimensional qualities that are hinted at or suggested by certain shapes and patterns within lines. So this would be a really good example down here of this feeling of like that there are towers coming up when really there is nothing in this whole illustration except for light colored lines and kind of medium shaded colored lines on black. That's it. It's the only thing here. And just by their orientation, they give this illusion of three-dimensional depth. And that's something that really kind of stood out to me. And after I had seen that one, I went on to look for other kind of similar patterns, like here, where we have, again, just gray lines on black. But because of the way those lines curve here, they give the illusion of cylinders that are wrapped into the lines of the design. This one is not as much about a three-dimensional shape, but really there's something about these curves and the way our eyes see them that give this an extremely layered feel when we look at it. And so, yeah, so any of these kinds of designs or patterns that can be developed in my artwork, I would be excited about the opportunity to incorporate some things like that, where what you experience is more than what you're actually seeing. And that kind of ties back even in to this one over here. So hopefully that gives you an idea of the way you should be using the artwork that you've collected on a couple of these slides for inspiration as a way to spark some thinking, some planning, some ideation before you go ahead and begin your sketching. In the end, I think we're going to want to hopefully go ahead and close down any of these visuals so that we're not looking at them while we sketch, but we want to have spent some time trying to get the things we like about them planted firmly in our mind so that we are building off of something that we know is successful or enjoyable to us when we go to explore new ideas. All right, I'm going to start with a set of designs that I think is kind of in line with the ones that have an emphasis on symmetry and triangles and circles and interaction. I'd like to still kind of incorporate some of the layering concepts, but that'll maybe be mostly for what happens on the side that I flip over. So I'm just going to start by really lightly drawing out some lines of symmetry on the shape. And I guess I started with one down the middle, but I know that the more important ones for these shapes were the ones on the diagonals. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of lightly draw those, trying to get things to cross in the middle, not worrying too much about details there. And then just to get a frame of reference for myself, I am going to start with one of these where there's a prominent circle in the middle. That might feel a little bit too much like just copying what the other artist has already done. But at least in this first design, I'm kind of trying to learn about how that other artist might have gone about building things here. And I guess I'll go ahead and start. I'm going to put another line across here. And then since I'm working in pencil, definitely something that I don't like about what's going on in here is how many lines are cutting into the middle. So I'm going to pick, I guess maybe I'm going to pick most of this top part of my circle. I want it to stay clean of lines, so I don't have to erase those a ton, but I'm going to come back in here and kind of emphasize that arc of the circle a little bit more, maybe with these drawn in. And I want it to kind of feel maybe like a sunrise coming up, like a low sun, maybe for a winter theme. And so I want this other horizon line in over here. I'm not sure if I want the circle to continue over there yet, but I do. I want the horizon line to come kind of all the way across in this. Maybe that means I don't want to have my circle continue in that spot. Right, so this is what I feel like I know so far. I think I do want to have this whole triangle coming down intact, and then this circle and the horizon line that stretches all the way across. And then I'm going to have to decide what's going on down here, whether I want none of the circle at all down there, or maybe just a piece of it. I guess I'm play around with the idea of just having maybe this piece of the circle stays, and we lose it in these other spots. And I think keeping these lines up here will give kind of an emanating light, kind of, especially if I choose my colors right on that one. I'm going to get some good light over there. And this is starting to feel like there are some pretty big empty spaces that I don't know if I like. It's simple right now, but I guess I have to decide how I want to break up these other shapes if I do want to. And yeah, so one thing I could do is just add in some other, right? Since we're breaking squares into a quarter of a square, this is another square, and it can kind of be split on the same diagonals as the whole thing. And that's kind of like a pattern inside of a pattern that works well maybe as a theme with these. If I look back at some of the artwork that I'm modeling this off of, that seems to be kind of a pattern to break these up. And let's see, maybe over here I could do the same thing, but in the side that has the circle piece in it, right? So that'll make things a little bit different. I guess I've got to decide whether I want to include this, and I'm going to say maybe no, but I'll have another kind of split on my square over here. So this will be kind of a unique shape that doesn't have anything to do with like triangles and circles necessarily, but it was built from the spaces in between them. So I have more spaces that I want to see filled. I just have to decide how I'm going to do that. Some other circle to balance out against this one that's sort of supposed to be representative of the sun might be nice. And I mean, the moon makes me feel like I want to see something up here in the sky, but I kind of also feel like I wonder whether kind of a semicircle down here in this spot, maybe even that wraps all the way around. Maybe this one doesn't show up in all of these spaces. Definitely over here, I want it to show up, and I guess then I want this triangle to come out right there. Yeah, lots of different things to play around with. Certain areas might start to feel heavy, and then you feel like you want to add in some things in other places. Maybe more spots where we explore more of the symmetry that could be kind of coming out of this. More squares inside of squares where some of them have their diagonals split. Would add more interest up there. Could be that this maybe is a space where we have like a moon shape fitting inside of one of these spots. And maybe I'm okay because of the busyness down here with one nice big open block of triangle to establish the dominant shape in the diagram. Okay, so there's one idea, and I'm just going to move on from there. On this other side, I thought about trying to replicate some of the graphics that give the illusion of three-dimensional depth, even though they're made of just curving lines. But I didn't feel like I really had time to explore that idea fully, and I'm worried that it isn't going to translate well into a sketch, and maybe it's something that would be better to just play around with and explore with a bunch of lines that are already made in Illustrator that are a lot easier to manipulate and reset. So on these back ones, I'm just going to try to go for something more organic. And one of the images that I like to kind of have this feeling like a topographical map. So that's what I'm going to go for here. Maybe to begin with, not really having any lines ever cross, really having a lot in common with the topographical map, and then maybe testing out to see what kind of things might happen if we let shapes overlap a little bit more, mixing in with that idea. So yeah, I think this is going to end up being a lot about balance. So I might choose a couple of high points to be kind of working maybe as point and counterpoint, but also I like the idea of three things, maybe with a couple of them paired even more. So got my three high points on this kind of spread out, and then I'll just kind of start working my way out from those, and sometimes try to hold pretty tight to what's already there, and sometimes maybe depart a little bit from what's in the original. By more or less. Maybe working on this one first, letting each old line kind of impact the way the new lines are moving. And then I'm going to see if we can get these connected together. Finish things off, we're gonna find those sketches wherever we've put them on our computer and add them into one or two screens or one or two slides of our slideshow for the playlist cover. I'm gonna update this title and change it to thumbnails and call it concept 1, and then duplicate this slide and label this next one as concept 2. The files I'm looking for should be in my downloads folder, so I'm going to click on my icon here for inserting an image. Say I want to upload it from my computer and head into my downloads. Go ahead and maybe I can just barely make out what these look like, I think. Oh, maybe I can't quite tell. All right, I'm hoping this is the right one. I'll click open. Yeah, that's the one I wanted to have in here first. See if we can get it to center. That looks good. And then on this next slide, same thing. Pull this one this time. Slide it over and up. And there we go. Nothing fancy, but we got them done and we're ready to move on to the next step.